Hey guys, welcome back to my vinyl channel. This is Greg, the internet's most addicted vinyl collector. Over 3,000 vinyl records behind you, strewn all over the house, and among other places. So today I wanted to just let you know about a couple of trips I had to the Goodwill recently. I stop at the Goodwill in different thrift shops like all the time, 2-3 times a week. And yesterday I stopped at 2 different stores on my way home from work. And surprise, both had decent records. Usually you show up and they've got nothing on the shelf but junk, but got lucky this week and 2 little stacks of records. The bad news for some of you is it's jazz and classical. Stay tuned. It's really hard to find good rock, classic rock at the Goodwill. A lot of the stuff that's donated is actually collections from older people, people who may have died recently, and their collections date back to the 50s and 60s. And 70s maybe. So these are some old records, but I like old records, vintage records, and sometimes they're worth something. So the first stack is from a Goodwill that I went to, and unfortunately they're now charging $1.99 for records. Boo-hoo. Okay, still a good deal if the records are good. So the first stack is sort of jazzy. Record number 1, Modern Jazz Quartet, also known as MJQ for short. This is the original release, it looks like, on Atlantic. There's the back. You can see the catalog number, the nice low 4-digit catalog number, Atlantic 1265. This appears to be from 1957, the original release. So Modern Jazz Quartet, kind of an unusual group in the world of jazz because they have no horn players, but they have a piano player, John Lewis, and actually the more famous member is Milt Jackson, guy with the glasses, who plays the vibes. They're always known for kind of dressing in this dapper suit and tie look, kind of a break from kind of the average jazz-looking outfit. Kind of a mellow record. If you're new to jazz, this is probably not the best place to start. These guys formed the band because they were actually in the Dizzy Gillespie band. They were the rhythm section for Dizzy Gillespie's big band, and then they broke off and started their own combo band. This has a lot of standard tunes on it, old standards, How Deep is the Ocean, Body and Soul, Devil in Deep Blue Sea, but I will name one song on here that's significant called Bags Groove, because Milt Jackson, the vibe player, that was his nickname, Bags. I don't know why I got that nickname, but Bags Groove is kind of his signature song. You also see that pretty common in those days is to have very extensive liner notes. So this has very extensive liner notes written by a guy named Nat Hentoff, who was probably the most prolific jazz writer and columnist probably of the whole century. Wrote a lot of articles, wrote a lot of liner notes, and then later on in life he became very into politics and wrote for some really liberal papers, and then he kind of switched and became more conservative, big libertarian. Nat Hentoff, interesting guy, just died, I think, about a year ago. Okay, same Goodwill. Yesterday we had 2 records from the great guitar player Joe Pass. Joe Pass, really kind of a traditional guitar player, playing one of those big box, big fat jazz guitars. And actually this is the better record of the 2, with bass player whose name I can't pronounce, Niels Henning Ørsted Petersen, famous jazz bass player. I don't know if you can see the label on the bottom of these. These are on the label called Pablo. Pablo was the 5th label started by great jazz producer Norman Granz. He's most famous for starting the Verve label. So this was kind of later in life. Well, these are okay records. They're not superstar jazz records because the players are kind of late in life. So these 2 records were made in 1978 and 1982. Anyway, it's a good find for $1.99 each. So Joe Pass, good guitar player. And then the final jazzy sort of record I got at the Goodwill was Billy Eckstine and Sarah Vaughan doing the music of the great composer Irving Berlin. Irving Berlin, the Jewish composer who composed White Christmas and other tunes like that. So I think this is 1958, original recording on Mercury Records. Good find for $2. So let's switch gears. I hit another Goodwill store same day, and they had just gotten a new collection of classical records. And oddly, they probably had 20 plus records on the same label, the Angel Records label. You can see they all kind of have a similar look, similar design. I'll show you one at a time real quick. But that probably means that somebody who collected classical records died and left their whole collection to the Goodwill. But why all Angel Records? I don't know. Kind of strange. So first one I'll show you is Herbert von Karajan is the name of probably the most famous classical conductor of all time. This is very early in his career in the 50s when he still had, before he had gray hair. And he's conducting Sibelius's Symphony No. 2. I don't really know that piece of music, but I'll check it out for $1. Von Karajan, I read up on him. Supposedly, he sold more albums than any other classical personality of all time. He made something like 400 records in his lifetime, and sold something like 200 million, which is a phenomenal amount of records. He's really associated with the Berlin Philharmonic. He was with them for 30 plus years, and really associated with Beethoven and kind of those heavy, serious German classics. But maybe on a lighter note, there was also a record of him conducting some Mozart. So this is Mozart's Symphony No. 38 and 39. Mozart, you may know, wrote something like 40 symphonies, but only the last 3 or 4 are really popular enough for people to record and play on a regular basis. I haven't listened to this yet, but notice all these records have in gold foil stamp the stereo logo. This was in the days when stereo recordings had just come out in the mid-50s, and people had to switch out their sound systems from mono to stereo, so made a big deal about the stereo. Okay, here's another one on Angel Records. Bach, The Musical Offering, with really famous violin player Yehudi Menuhin. Bach, I'll check it out. Maybe it'll be good. Who knows? A couple more on Angel. Famous violinist, see if I can pronounce his name right, David Oistrakh, who's a very famous Russian violinist. So here's him doing a Mozart violin concerto and a Prokofiev violin concerto. Prokofiev and he were actually friends. Prokofiev, I guess, died around the middle of the 20th century. And then another one of the same violinists doing some Brahms. $1 each. I'll check them out. They're in good shape. So one thing I should mention, a lot of these old classical records are in great shape because they come with plastic inner sleeves. So a lot of the old records you get in thrift shops are kind of trashed and are in paper sleeves that fall apart, but the good kind of classical labels usually have plastic inner sleeves. And so these records that are 50 plus years old will probably be in pretty good shape. Last one in the classical bunch, Handel Messiah. This is the excerpts. This is not the whole thing. The whole thing would be 2 or 3 discs. So this is kind of greatest hits from Handel's Messiah, which is a religious piece, kind of good for Christmas also. Okay, one more record, and kind of the prize of this trip to the Goodwill. Got very lucky to find a copy of Nat King Cole's Christmas album, The Christmas Song. This is one of the all-time classic Christmas albums, sold millions and millions and millions of copies. It's got the Christmas Song, which is also known as Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire, written by Mel Torme, another Jewish guy writing Christmas songs. He claimed that he was in Palm Springs when it was really hot and he wanted to write a song to cool down with. Christmas Song, Away in a Major, Deck the Halls, O Tannenbaum, Silent Night, Joy to the World, etc., etc. Actually, It's not that hard to find this record because so many millions were sold, but I like having a vintage copy from the 50s as opposed to, actually I think this was 1963. Rather have a vintage copy for $1 than having to spend 15 or 20 bucks on a new copy. And most of those records came in plastic sleeves, but I took this one out already. Came in a paper sleeve. And hate the paper sleeves because they tend to scratch up records. But these old sleeves, when you get the originals, they have all these cool ads for all the other albums that are coming out on Capitol. So Wayne Newton, Peggy Lee, Nancy Wilson, who just died a couple days ago, Sammy Davis Jr., Sinatra, Stan Kenton, the Beatles, of course, the Beach Boys, etc., etc. So cool find. So that's like 10 or 11 records at the Goodwill in one day for about 12 bucks or something. Good find at the Goodwill. All right, guys, that's my Goodwill find for the week. The bad news is I'm going to go to the Goodwill again this week and the week after and end up with hundreds more records. So thanks for watching. Hope you can hit subscribe if you'd like to hear more of my videos. And go ahead and ask me questions about my videos or these records if you want, and I'll try to answer them on the channel. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.